and just a variety of other commercial organizations. So I graduated from George Mason. I won't say what year. Graduated from George Mason. I've been in public accounting my entire career. So, and while I was in school, I did work in industry, so have a little bit of a mix of exposure for different aspects of the profession. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Dave, how about yourself?
Thank you, Kaleb. Thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Dave Hollander, and I'm a tax partner at Citrin Cooperman, and I'm in the DC Metro office. And we are a firm that is effectively a regional firm from Boston down to DC, and we also are now on the West Coast. As a tax partner, I basically work with business owners on their business taxation. We also provide consulting for them personally from a tax perspective. My clients come in two major buckets. One would be family operations that go on generation after generation, and then the other bucket would be entrepreneurs that are looking to sell within a 5 to 7 year period. So to that end, we also do a lot of M&A consulting. We do tax modeling. We work with attorneys when there are deals. We kind of work with a lot of entrepreneurs that are engineers and people in different industries, and we sort of walk them through the process and get them from the beginning when it's sort of maybe their aunt is doing the books and they're just starting out, and then we take them through that process and get them up to the sale. And a lot of times they go on to something else and they're on to the next business. So it's pretty exciting, and I enjoy it very much. I'm originally from New York. I moved down to Virginia 2007, and now I'm in Maryland, and I love what I do.
Thank you. Carrie, how about yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Carrie Bedell, and I'm not an accountant. I work as the executive director of the Greater Washington Society of CPAs. So we are not an accounting firm, but we are a membership organization of accountants and other financial professionals in the Greater Washington, D.C. area, which includes Maryland and Virginia. I have about 3,500 members. I have representatives from all the firms that are here on the panel today, but also Big Four, all the way down to sole practitioners, and quite a few members who are in industry, either commercial industries or especially nonprofits in this area. We have a lot of members in nonprofits and government as well. Our support for students includes scholarships that are available for college students locally. We award between $20,000 and $30,000 a year in scholarships to local universities. Support for CPA exam study, trying to help you make connections with firms and with other potential employers, leadership programs for students, and especially we offer a lot of what used to be live face-to-face programs, now are mostly Zoom, but free student membership. So if you want to kind of explore an area of the profession, you can drop into sessions like that and kind of see what people a little bit further along in their career are doing. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, great, thank you. And last but not least, Andrew.
Thanks, Kaleb, and thanks everyone for listening this afternoon. Andrew Clements, I work with Grant Thornton here where our office is in Roslyn, in Arlington. I started with the firm quite a long time ago at this point over in the UK, where I'm from originally, and then after 4 years working there straight out of school, came over to the US on a short-term placement we call a secondment. It's only going to be for 18 months, and now I'm just about 14 years in, so I guess I lost my return airfare ticket on the somewhere along the way, and settled in America and worked my way through the firm over here in the US to audit partner, which is the role I currently serve. I've been doing that for about 4 years. As an audit partner, I sign audit opinions for public and private companies, try not to expose the firm to too much risk by doing that, and manage the process that goes on, all the hours and hard work that goes into being able to issue an audit opinion. Also act as a career coach for a number of people, including interns and people joining us as associates from different universities, and then up to managers and senior managers who see themselves on the partner track as well. And the third thing that I do in an average week, if someone asked me what the hell I've been doing, would be revenue growth and selling for the firm, which is certainly a big part of being a partner, is growing the firm to make way for people up and coming who want to be the next wave of partners with the firm as well. So happy to be here and excited to answer any questions.
Perfect, thank you. So my next question is, how has the coronavirus situation impacted your business, and how has your firm responded to those challenges? Amy, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I think, the largest impact, of course, would be just the virtual work and the fact that we're, not meeting face to face in our audit practice. Our partners all the way to our staff are very used to being out in the field or in the office together. We've always had lots of flexibility and certainly have been set up to work remote. That's one of the nice things about the audit practice is we really work remote every day, but we just happen to be working in our clients' offices. So I think just just like with everyone else, the change in not having the face-to-face interaction has been the biggest change for us. Fortunately, as with many, this really happened overnight. And so it was just one day we were kind of still moving along, and then the next day everybody's working from home. So fortunately, we did adjust to that very well and across our business lines, our advisory practice, our tax practice, our consultants, our audit practice. Luckily, everybody was very well situated to pick right up and just did, a tremendous job across our firm, but especially in our office, I couldn't be more proud of the way my practice handled it. And so, it's obviously everybody getting used to the working from home, I think has been the largest impact. Fortunately, we happen to work with a group of clients that have that provide services to the federal government. And so, or at least a large portion of our office does. And so they've done well through this so far. And so we've actually remained very busy, which is good. And, we've just, I think the biggest response has been flexibility just for our clients, but really more so for our professionals, just making sure that whatever they needed on a personal level, we were being flexible and, just allowing everyone to kind of get their work done in their own way, which is really the only way you can do things right now. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Carrie, how about yourself?
Well, a lot of what we do is professional education that was in person, so that's pretty different now. We were positioned pretty well to shift to working remotely. We had actually left our long-term lease about a year ago in a move to be telecommuting for the most part. We only have 4 staff, so it was a pretty easy transition. We've been very busy, and a lot of our members are very busy, ever since March, getting information out about PPP, tax changes constantly. It feels like a kind of a barrage of information that we're trying to funnel out to our members. So that's been very busy. And I hear from them that they're remaining, for the most part, very busy during this time. Larger firms who were ready to make that transition are, I think, faring better than some of the smaller ones who are really struggling with the shift in the work environment. And a lot of them talk to me now about seeing this be not necessarily managing a short-term crisis, but a longer-term change to the way that they work and trying to figure out how they're going to adapt to that going forward.
Great, thank you. And Dave, how about yourself and your firm?
Well, it's definitely been interesting. And coincidentally, we migrated from Skype to Microsoft Teams and before COVID. And we were just saying, all right, well, it's really the big deal with that. I don't see what the value is. And then COVID hit, and I'm sitting in my house using Teams, and I'm going to say that the transition was seamless, except for dogs barking, but aside from, and kids screaming. But aside from that, I'd say the transition's been pretty seamless. And so that's been a positive about what's happened with COVID. I've actually seen more people than I have pre-COVID, including some clients, at least their faces. I talk to them on the phone, I email them, and now I'm seeing a lot more people face to face. And I'm not shilling for Teams here, by the way, but I'm just saying another benefit of it, because Zoom has the same feature, is just sharing screens, and it just, I'm not in the office, but I'm getting that benefit. Alternatively, it's a little bit of a challenge for staff, because especially new staff, they haven't had a chance to be in the office and be around people. And so, integrating them and making them feel a part of the team is, been a little bit different than if we were in the office. But we're working towards that end, and it's been interesting. Something that staff have been telling me is that, one of the challenges is there's a commute to work. I'm at work now and I'm leaving work. It's sort of like if you're in an apartment or in a house or in a dorm room, you've got your laptop right there. So it's like your work is always there. So there's that challenge of finding that balance, and we're trying to work with our staff for them to have that. But it's been very interesting. And I'll just say that our clients, some clients have been impacted, especially those in the restaurant and entertainment industry, but other clients in government contracting, real estate, that's kind of up in the air. So it's interesting, and we'll see how this plays out.
Thank you. So my next question, I want to first start with Andrew. How has COVID-19 impacted your hiring needs and your recruiting strategies? And what is kind of the biggest challenges that you're looking at when recruiting candidates?
That's a multi-pronged question. I think the biggest impact I've felt recently is that we nationally run an internship program every summer for several hundred interns divided by amongst our offices. And at short order, our recruiting team had to assemble an internship program that was virtual this year. And we did a great job, but that was the internship is a really important way for us to get to know candidates and for candidates to get to know us. And that ran very differently to anything anyone's ever seen before. So the virtual side of it, I think, has been a real challenge, and we're still to see the results of that. I think as to whether there's enough of a connection there that everyone gets enough opportunity to learn about us or about other firms that they've done a similar thing with as well. So that was definitely a near-term challenge. For the future, there's a lot of uncertainty. So for my service line audit, our hiring hasn't really been impacted. The way we do it, as others have said already, is definitely been impacted. This event, as a case in point, I'd much rather be there in person, meeting people and asking questions face to face. So that's certainly been a challenge, and will continue to be as well. And I think that in professional services, the longer term outlook, especially for some service offerings that are more on demand rather than recurring in nature, like audits. So companies typically have to get one done every year. What those business models look like is still still trying to figure that out, and what the demand's going to be like, and that will ultimately impact hiring strategy. But as of right now, we're still proceeding with our what would be normal levels of recruiting.
Great, thank you. And Makenzie, same question.
Yeah, so very similar answer to Andrew. Our firm is in the same path, focused on serving the federal government. That is our market specifically. And the hiring is all dependent on the predicted contracts to be awarded, which really doesn't have anything to do with the coronavirus. So hiring as usual, just how we do it is different, which is my job to strategize and come up with alternative plans and really streamline it, not only for the students, but for my people here at the firm too, making their lives easy to interview, to make it seamless, to make it just as it would be, in the office, like we would. We also transitioned to a virtual internship program that was a challenge to restructure that format in a short amount of time. I had to do it single-handedly. It was challenging. I have support from all of our senior leaders here at the firm, which was really reassuring to see. And the students were nervous, and it took a lot of reassuring them and proactive communication, so on and so forth. And it turned out to be better than definitely anyone expected. Everyone out of the internship group, we actually just wrapped up last week. All of them got offers to join with us full time, or return for a senior internship, which was amazing. It was a great group of students. And actually right now, today and tomorrow is a virtual externship program, which I also had to reformat virtually, which was also a challenge. But it was only 2 days, so it wasn't as strenuous as the internship program being 2 months. But just adjusting. Technology helps. We're also in Microsoft Teams, and we transitioned right before coronavirus hit. And it couldn't have been a better time, similar to you guys, Dave. It's really, really helpful. A really good tool. We just started to use Zoom actually today for the externship program. And it's also a good tool, but we're really just going to be using Zoom on the campus recruiting side of things, but keep Teams within Kearney.
Thank you. And then I'll open the question up. Dave, Amy, or Carrie, anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah,
Please do.
Oh, sorry, Dave. Yeah, I would just echo everything. And I don't know if Sarah Turcott, who I know is listening in on the call, she actually heads up the recruiting side for us. I think she would probably echo sentiments. She might have something to add on that side. I would say for hiring needs, similar, that part has not really been impacted. Thankfully, you know, we're still very busy and, you know, still looking for good candidates. We just need to find them in a different way. So I would agree.
It looks like Sarah in the chat said yes.
She's muted. So.
Yeah. Carrie, anything from your end on maybe some of the smaller firms, since we've got a lot of, you know, larger firms that are represented here? Have you heard anything from smaller size firms?
I don't see them doing a lot of hiring, you know, any more hiring than they were. They're kind of been holding in place a little bit. I am starting to see some movement since, what are we, 5 or 6 months in now? Some movement in industry, people switching around. They weren't at first, everybody was just kind of in a holding pattern, and now I'm starting to see some shifts in hiring there. I'm also starting to see, especially within nonprofits, but also in some of our other industry members, considering either letting people leave the geographic area and stay employed, or potentially recruiting outside of this area as well, especially if they're in a very kind of, I was talking to somebody today who's in like an agricultural niche, and so they're like, well, maybe we need to look for somebody in the Midwest as opposed to always trying to have somebody who's local. So I think we're going to see more shifts like that. Yeah,
that's interesting because, you know, I talk to colleagues in other firms, you know, the top of conversations, we're looking for people in tax, I'll say on the tax side, I'm sure audit as well. And to that end, we are actively looking, and we've been successful, and we've actually recruited a couple of people from outside the state, different parts of the country, and that's been very interesting. And very good candidates. They've been good so far, but again, going back to integrating them through Teams, it's working, and it's just new to me, and it's interesting. So, but there are people looking, and I'm sure most firms are looking to hire on the tax and audit side. I'm sure.
Great, thank you. And I think that's going to be a big relief to a lot of students to hear. You know, many of them have heard from friends of, you know, canceled internships or postponing job offers and things. So the fact that, you know, they've got the reassurance from you all that folks are still hiring, I think is really great. That leads
I think there might have been an initial reaction when COVID came out, and that might have been what it was, you know, but now people have had time to sort of step back, and so maybe that's changed, I think.
So that kind of leads me into my next question, and Makenzie, I'll start with you. What qualities have become even more important in virtual settings with either interviewing or networking since the pandemic has hit?
Honestly, a lot of them are still the same as if they were in person. Honestly, those soft skills, being able to communicate, obviously now in a different way. But you still have to be able to conduct yourself in a Teams call, being able to effectively communicate just through your webcam. Be proactive in communication, whether it be on email, email etiquette, things like that. Your writing skills are definitely huge, no matter what industry you go in. Something that's very valuable, even aside, obviously, from the pandemic and everything. The skill sets, I would say, I'm looking for the same skill sets as I would in person, just looking through the webcam.
Andrew, anything else to add?
I think just interviewing virtually or trying to build a connection with people or as a group virtually is a different challenge to doing it in person. And so if I were a candidate applying, I really have to be brave and bold and ask questions. And there's awkward silences all the time on these things where you're probably about to do this, Kaleb, where you can ask the group, does anyone have any questions? And the candidates that stand out are those that you maybe get over being self-conscious about being on camera and ask the questions and get noticed that way. I think that's building off of what Makenzie said. I think that's a thing that we've all had to overcome, but we see that a little bit as we went through our virtual internship program recently. We had to keep encouraging people. Now, when the presenter stops and says, "Does anyone have any questions?" you should be asking questions, and the inclination is to sit quietly on these things.
And to kind of piggyback off of that also, it might take some of our own folks who are maybe interviewing them to be aware of those cues to help the conversation go and use those different transitional words to kind of ease the conversation as we go. I actually just hosted a panel right before this one, and I was the Kaleb of the panel, and you have to keep the conversation moving, and they're shy at first, and they open up over the duration of the period. And I would do the same advice that Andrew mentioned, just ask the questions when addressed. I agree.
That leads me kind of into my next question, mentioning virtual etiquette and things. Amy, do you have any advice for students that you would give when networking virtual to make a positive impact?
Yeah, I think actually all of the same sort of ties right back in. I think when virtual, it is a little bit harder to keep the conversation going. It does depend on the format a little bit. I think especially in groups, it's harder. I mean, we see that even in meetings with full experienced professionals that have been doing this for a long time. It just creates a little bit of a pause because you don't know who's going to talk next. So you really have to be paying attention. You have to make sure that you're as present during a video interview or conference or whatever as you would be if you were in person. You wouldn't be looking at your phone or your email or whatever. And it's really hard to remember that sometimes. So that you can make sure you're there. But all of the things, that were mentioned related to communication and speaking up and, getting out of that comfort zone, I think it applies here as well. And I saw Sarah chatted on her mute, to be on time. And, obviously that's very important too. So.
Carrie, knowing that you all do a lot of education in the virtual space, any tips that you would give to students?
I would echo what was said before about seasoned professionals having a hard time with it and feeling awkward too. So don't feel like you're the only one who feels that way. I had a CFO roundtable this morning, and I was being the Kaleb, and I was trying to spur conversation, and it would be quiet for a while. And so it happens to everybody. Logistically, I think making sure you're in a space that you can, turn your video on, put your mute on when you're supposed to. Even if you're wearing pajama pants, put on a respectable top, have a bright room so try to eliminate weird noises in the background as much as you can. Just try to present yourself professionally in this weird environment as best you can.
And
I think,
when you are on something like this where you have an option of just video or, you know, video and, or I'm sorry, just audio or video and audio, definitely, you know, turn your video on. I know when we first started all of this after COVID hit, most of the time we were just on calls. And even when we first got Teams, but then it starts to change a little bit. And more of our clients started using the video, and then we started using the video more internally. And it is definitely better. It's like, I think what Dave said earlier is true. In some respects, there are, you know, certain clients you know, that maybe you don't see in person as much because maybe they're not in the local area or whatever the case may be. And you do in some instances see them more because you're always having a video chat rather than on the phone. So.
Great.
And it's always helpful to have those reminders. I know I reminded my group over the summer, you know, videos on, just to, you know, give them that reminder, because we're all transitioning at the same time, which is the beautiful thing about it. Honestly, the interns throughout the summer, they grew right along with all of us going through the pandemic at the same time. So it was cool to see that growth from not just them, but our own people too, having to adapt.
Great. Kind of transitioning into maybe a little lighter, you know, conversations. Dave, we'll start with you. What do you find most rewarding about your work besides, you know, the pay?
Pay's a nice part of it. But yeah, no, I'll say that, to be frank, I just, I love learning, and I like, and it's interesting. It's not just about learning, you know, when new tax law comes out, new tax legislation is passed. Yeah, there's learning there, but that's actually, sometimes that's cumbersome, especially when it's dropped at an inopportune time. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I'm talking to you, CARES Act. So, you know, that's a little bit of a challenge, but I do love learning. And the best part is when you learn something and you get to apply it in a real life situation. There's nothing like that. You can read about examples. You guys are at school, you're taking tests, you're doing, learning about examples. There are exhibits, but in real life, when you apply it, it's pretty rewarding. And so that's something that I really do enjoy about this job. The other thing I enjoy about this is actually the business development, because, you know, to get a new client is exciting because it's a whole slew of new things to learn. And that's exciting too. You know, every client is different, even if they're in the same industry. There's a nuance to their situation, and it's rewarding to have that opportunity. And so while business development makes other people in your firm happy, it's personally rewarding as well. So, you know, I enjoy it.
Great, thank you. Andrew, same question.
Certainly building off of what Dave said, I think what I enjoy about my job, several things. One is, believe it or not, the flexibility. It used to be a privilege to work from home. At this point, I'm actually looking forward to a day when I go back to the office or to a client site. But my family's a little older now, but when I had a young family, the flexibility to be able to manage my schedule around other commitments was really important to me, and continues to be today as my daughter goes to lessons and things like that. So the flexibility afforded by being in professional services, I think is a great feature. So working from home was something that I'm getting to do more of now. The other aspect, the thing that's kept me in the profession is the people side of the business, whether it be clients or people who work for me. I really miss the casual interactions, being in an office and catching up with people all the time, because you don't get to see everyone every day. You're not in the same space, working with sat next to the same person all the time. It's real variety of in your schedule. So the people aspect of it as well. I've made some great friends over the years that are still some of my best friends now from working in the profession. And there's a real camaraderie, at the partner level, we all stick together and help each other through more stressful times, which there are some. Serving clients has its ups and its downs. So that, and then last thing is the variety of my schedule, and that has been true all the way through from senior associate upwards. Really, my 1 week to the next is very different. One day to the next actually is many different things and conflicting priorities, including being inspected by regulators, selling, coaching people, all of the above. It really keeps you on your toes.
Great, thank you. Carrie, anything else to add?
Sure. I don't do the same kind of technical work as the rest of the panel, but I like, I've been here for 11 years. I like working with CPAs a lot. They're all smart. They're very pragmatic. They're very curious. Dave was talking about continuing to learn. I really like that about this profession, is that people are always learning new things. You guys have a lot of variety in your work. That makes me have a lot of variety in my work, and it keeps me interested and creative. I like making connections for people. So when someone's struggling with something in their organization, I know someone else who has figured out a way to handle that, and I can connect those two people to solve a work problem. I like, you guys are all problem solvers, and I like being a problem solver within that profession too.
Great, thank you. My next question, Makenzie, this one's for you. Is there a typical career path that you see someone choosing from, let's say, audit, advisory, or tax?
Yeah, so I would say yes, there are. Kind of like Andrew mentioned, you know, you started as a senior associate. Was that within audit at Grant?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was, yes.
Right. That's a very traditional career path, especially here at Kearney as well. Starting out as a staff associate, you could be starting as an intern, actually an extern. We finally have made it through the cycle that you could be an extern to intern to staff, and then work your way up as the future goes on. So yes, there are very traditional paths, but then there are some deviations as we grow as a firm too. Our data analytics practice is spiking right now, and their career path is defined, but it's different than, you know, being in the audit side of things too. So yes and no.
Great. Dave, anything to add for particularly the tax side?
So typical career path. Well, on the tax side, there's a tax and there's advisory. So on the tax side, no, it's traditional. I mean, we have different levels, and as you gain more experience, we evaluate whether to promote and go from there. And the whole goal when you come on is to, if we hire that person, and I'm sure this is the case for the other firms as well, we want that person to grow and get to the higher status, which is partner. So that's the end goal when there's that hire. So, but as far as the typical career path, I mean, it could be 1.5 years, 2 years at each level potentially, all depending on how they do. And we make it a point to invest in that person, provide the training and life experience for them to advance.
Great. My next question is for you, Amy. What obligations does your work put on you outside of the traditional work week?
Well, that depends on the time of year. So fortunately, and you know, again, I'm an audit partner, and I have been on the audit side since I started in public accounting. And before I joined BDO, I was with a small firm that grew into a regional size firm, and then we merged into BDO. And I have been working with privately held companies for my entire career. So, and you know, the mostly with, as I mentioned, with government contractors. And so the cycle for me, for my practice has always been a mostly calendar year type of client base. And then we have, you know, other things that we do over the summer that keep us busy. So I have a traditional busy season, if you will, that goes over the winter. And so generally we're pretty busy from late January through April 30th, because a lot of our clients have deadlines for their financial statements by April 30th. So during that window, you know, it's definitely not what you would call a 9 to 5 type of hours. all of the things that everyone mentioned related to the benefits and what we love about our job are, you know, are all there. But the reason that those benefits are there is because it is a pretty demanding and dynamic profession. And when you're in client service, your clients' issues are your issues, and that's why you learn so much. But they all have their needs at a very similar time of year. And so it does require a lot of work during that time period. Or, you know, you may have a different type of client base, but generally, no matter what practice, audit, tax, advisory, you have spikes here and there based on when your clients are busy. And when the work comes in for advisory, it's like you drop everything and you know, you do it. You handle the transactions, whatever your client needs. And so there are times where you have to be prepared to work more than a 40-hour week, and it might be 45, it might be 60. You know, it's just, we try, as I'm sure all here do, to manage it the best we can. We're certainly not having people work 80-hour weeks or anything like that, but you know, there's times where you know, it's a good amount above a 40-hour week. But the good thing is that's limited based on whatever cycle you might be in with your clients. And, you know, again, it's the nature of the beast. I think the accounting industry in general, even outside of public accounting, is a demanding profession. Actually, some of my best friends are in industry, in CFO and controller type positions, and they certainly face a similar demanding schedule. But I think the nice thing about public accounting too is that there's a lot of movement, and it's very dynamic, working with a lot of different clients, going different places. And so I think that helps balance it out a bit so that it doesn't feel as grueling. So that's what I enjoy about it. But then it's the nature of the beast. You have the other piece it is very demanding at times, and does require sometimes hours, evenings, weekends, during crunch times.
Great, thank you. So at this point, I want to open it up to the chat. So students, if you do have a question that you would like to ask, feel free to input that question into the chat, and then we'll go ahead and read them. But before, just as you're kind of thinking about that, I just have one question for you all is, what do you see as major trends in the industry in the next 3 to 5 years? Anyone can answer that one.
Probably all have the same answer. Data analytics.
Yeah.
and automation, and yeah, certainly I audit, and I'm sure tax as well. Just using data analytics, other automation tools to do a lot of work that requires the work and the analysis, but it will free the humans up to do the more interesting aspects. So that's certainly a good thing. And now I think that we're going to start seeing trends among firms and our clients with more less space, or at least less space planned for people. I think a lot more people are going to be working remotely than before. The question is, do they have to maintain the same amount of space for fewer people, and when is that going to change? So I think that's going to be something else that I think firms are going to be reassessing how much real estate they need. And I think that's obviously new due to the pandemic. And the other thing, and again, Sarah might want to chat something in on this. I'll keep an eye out for her. But I think the other thing is also, or Makenzie, but I think the other thing is just we were already going to more virtual recruiting, and that seems to be a trend that was already going. And of course now it's gone, totally over the top. But very different. But I think even without COVID, that was something that was trending. And the good thing, I guess, is that it allows us to get to a broad base of schools. Obviously, we've always heavily recruited at George Mason, and you know, the good thing for your students is that they can potentially now get exposure to companies that are outside of this area if that's something that they were interested in. So, yeah.
I completely agree. Recruiting is moving virtual one way, pandemic or no pandemic, definitely. And now it's adapting, especially for us, for example, not as large as BDO, for example, but we didn't do as much virtual recruiting. So it's more so catching up to that right now. But there are so many different platforms, especially within the campus side. Handshake, we can reach so many different universities under one umbrella, which is phenomenal. Before I got to Kearney, that was not the case. They had, you know, certain schools, and then that was it. Their horizons weren't broadened. So that has definitely changed the game. And for, you know, full cycle recruiting as well, obviously the virtual element, it's changing, and it's making everything more convenient. And it's just about how companies adapt to it to make it personal. You have to put your personal touch to it so it doesn't feel too automated.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I know that's a struggle, I think, for you know, mid-sized firms, larger firms, just trying to figure out how to put that. And I know Sarah commented in here, it's just rethinking everything. But the nice thing is that you do get more touches across more universities, and so it is exciting. But yeah, those are the things, Makenzie, that you and Sarah, we just show up and interview the great candidates and talk on the panels and all those logistics. I don't know how Sarah and Katie in our firm keep their heads on straight. It's a lot.
I'm sure I could
talk of pain very quickly. Yes, I'm sure.
Right. So again, students, if anyone has any questions, please please feel free to do so. So I guess we do have a question in, and it's for all of our wonderful panelists. Do you have one piece of advice for our MSA students as they start their program? Say maybe something that you wish you would have known before you jumped into either you know, a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree.
I can go. So very similar to you guys, I did a master's program. I chose a hybrid path in organizational leadership. And I chose hybrid because I wanted the best of both worlds. I don't know what your class schedule looks like necessarily, but for those virtual classes that I attended, I would say a piece of advice is to still branch out, network, make connections within your own groups, your own industry, your own classes, you know, find similarities, build your network, and lean on each other, definitely, especially during, you know, a time like this. You guys are all going to go through it together, so definitely put yourselves out there.
Yep, and I think that's all great advice on the programs. And this is something that I did know, and I've been always very grateful that, again, I went to George Mason and I was coached, so I'm sure that everyone on this call is coached the same way, but having a plan to get your CPA as soon as possible, you know, either while as soon as you have the credits, you know, whatever you can do while you're still finishing up, if you're in a master's, whether, you know, you're doing it right after you graduate, and maybe before you start a full-time position, or as soon as you start a full-time position, but do not wait. It does not get easier. We see so many students come in and just struggle to get through that, to the point where it's honestly heartbreaking to watch really good performers be held back for promotion to manager because they have not gotten through the CPA exam. So, and it's not because they're not smart individuals and they're not capable. It's just, you know, personal life, working full time, if you haven't been doing that already, is a huge change. And in this profession, it's very busy. And it's a lot to take on in addition to full-time job. Of course it can be done, and we have many, you know, new recruits that do it, but it's just, you know, getting it knocked out is just a huge weight off your shoulders, and it's so important for your advancement in your career. And so that would be my advice, is just really stick with that. I can't stress it enough.
Utilize your good study habits now.
Yep, that's right. While you're still in that. Because if I had to take it again now, I might be changing professions.
Andrew, what's your piece of advice for our students?
I think that this is my advice to myself from however many years ago it was that I was at university. It's certainly the taking advantage of the opportunities that you have, and that's really, as Makenzie mentioned, being able to connect with a wide group of people and then stay in touch with them, which is where I probably stumbled when I left university in England. I just didn't do a great job. I moved over to America, and life gets in the way, I guess. So taking the most of that opportunity, and then opportunities either at university or early on in your career to travel. It gets more complicated as your personal life gets more anchored down in a place with a family and a house, etc. To take the opportunity to go on a placement and work or live somewhere else. But it really does broaden your horizons. You learn a different culture, even definitely coming from England to America the way I did it. It does make you challenge yourself, and others will challenge you as well, because you think you leave a place thinking you're top dog, go somewhere else where they all work a bit harder or do things a little differently, and it really resets your perception of yourself. So taking advantage of all of those opportunities at that time in your life, I think it would be the advice I give to myself.
Thank you. Dave, how about yourself? Any last words of wisdom for our students?
I don't know how much I can add to what everyone said before, because it was quite poignant and valuable. But I'm going to again emphasize, get your CPA. That I'm going to emphasize. Do it now. And also, we're talking about building a network. That's important, and it's a business network, and you just sort of build it now when you're young, and you'll see how it builds over time, and you'll see where your friends and connections are 5, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and you'll be surprised. It's a life network, and you start to build it now, and you'll reap the fruits of that labor later on, and it's worth it. I'll also say, figure out how to have a balance in your life that applies to me right now, and figure it out now. It's work and it's play, and you need both, because both will help you advance. Too much of one and not the other could set you back. And so, I definitely believe in working very hard, but there's got to be a balance. And so, and if you can maintain that balance, you'll progress and you'll be happier professionally and personally. So.
It looks like we do have just a few questions in the chat now, finally. But what are you primarily looking for in graduate interns who have completed sections of the CPA exam?
I would say just keep working hard, keep at it, completing all parts of the CPA. Network, learn about companies, do your research. It's a two-way street when it comes to finding your employer. You want to love it as much as they love you, because you want to be happy, because if you're not happy, you're probably going to underperform. The happier you are with the firm, the happier and more motivated you will be to work. So you want to really research before you dive in to something is probably what I would say.
I agree with that, and I think that all just ties right into everything that everyone said as far as just the advice, the general advice of what we wish we had known, or if you can go into an interview and demonstrate that you understand the industry and kind of how the industry interacts between what we refer to as these firms, public accounting firms, versus going into, industry and being part of an accounting, a company and being part of the accounting department in that company, or some other type of advisory association, like with Carrie, kind of understanding how all of that interacts. You establish that understanding by that networking and by talking to people and understanding what they do. And so when you go into interview with a firm for an internship or other type of position, you can use that information that you gain to understand, so that your interview's not spent with the interviewer explaining to you what a firm does, the types of positions that are available in the industry, and because there's so much about the role of an accountant in in various positions that is not solely about accounting. So.
Great, wonderful. I do want to be mindful of time. There is one last question in the chat. Is there any specific specialized platforms that you all use for either virtual events or, even more importantly, interviewing? Zoom, WebEx, Teams?
All of the above was the last option, and that's the one I would pick.
Perfect.
Getting ready for an interview, I would encourage you to try to practice with all of them so that you know what you're doing and you don't stumble.
Yeah, you will come across all of them, I'm sure.
Even for my full cycle hires, experienced hires, even at a senior manager level, I tell them to test out the technology in your calendar invite the night before, please, just to make everyone's life easier. I totally understand, technical issues happen, but just be proactive about it. And I would give the same advice to students. But all of those platforms I would be familiar with.
Thank you. Well,
Yes.
Andrew,
I was going to say, it's best to let the partner who's interviewing you stumble with the technology, which I have to say has happened a couple of times to me.
Well, guaranteed to happen too.
Click on the link, and then the application needs to download first before you can join the meeting. So it happens.
Great. Well, I want to thank you each very much. I know that our students got a lot out of it, and we're getting a number of thanks in there. So Makenzie, Amy, Dave, Carrie, Andrew, thank you all so much. We really appreciate all of your time and kind of all of your really great, insightful information that you shared with us. Students, please connect with our office in Career Services in the School of Business. Many of these things that our panelists have advised you to, we can help with that interview practice, those resumes, those virtual events. So please don't feel like you're going to bother us or anything. We are here to serve. So with that, I will go ahead and close the panel. So if everyone can say thank you in the chat or through a little emoji and your reactions to all of our panelists. There you can see what it looks like. All right, again, I'm going to go ahead and end everything. Thank you again. We really appreciate it. And until we see you all next time, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Care.
Bye.